The United States has announced it has spent $25 billion on the war in Iran so far. The Pentagon's chief accountant gave that number to Congress yesterday. The 60-day legal deadline for this war runs out tomorrow night. Pakistan told the UN Security Council yesterday that the real cause of every fire burning in the Middle East is the same one: the occupation of Palestinian land by Israel. And oil prices have jumped again. Brent crude crossed $125 a barrel today. American drivers are now paying $4.23 a gallon at the pump. Some stations in California are showing $8. I am Zunaira Azhar, and this is Decode, where we define and analyze the stories shaping our world. 3 stories tonight. A war that is running out of money and may now run out of the legal cover as well. An occupation that has run for 60 years, named on record this week as the cause of every other crisis around it. And a barrel of oil that is now sitting the politics of Washington and Tehran. 3 stories, 1 set of consequences. Let's decode the night. Yesterday, the 29th of April, the Pentagon's chief accountant Jules Hurst told the House Armed Services Committee that the war in Iran has cost $25 billion so far. The code name of the war is Operation Epic Fury, Hurst said. Most of the money has gone on bombs and missiles. He said a fresh request of $200 billion will go to Congress in the coming weeks. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was sitting next to him. Hegseth told the committee that the biggest threat to the United States now faces is, in his words, the reckless, feckless, and defeatist talk of Democrats and some Republicans in Congress. He defended a $1.5 trillion defense budget for next year. That is the largest defense budget in American history. It is 40% more than this year. The Joint Chiefs Chairman, General Dan Kane, sat next to Hegseth. He told the committee 13,000 targets have been hit inside Iran since the 28th of February. A study published this month by the Center for Strategic and International Studies says the U.S. has used roughly half of certain key missile stockpiles already. Senior Pentagon officials have warned the country could not fight a parallel war with China for more than a few weeks. Tonight, Axios is reporting that Central Command has prepared a fresh wave of strikes on Iran. A second plan would send ground troops to seize part of the Strait of Hormuz and open it by force. The president is being briefed. Hegseth is in front of the Senate today. The 60-day legal deadline under the War Powers Act runs out at midnight on Friday. Let's have a look at what these numbers actually mean, because the money and the politics move together. $25 billion in 2 months, mostly on bombs and missiles. The U.S. is using up its weapons stockpile at a rate the Pentagon's own people say it cannot keep up. Half of certain missile stocks gone. The factories that make these weapons take years to refill them, not months. So when General Kane told Congress yesterday that Iran is weaker than it has been in decades, the honest follow-up is whether the U.S. is also weaker than it was on the 28th of February. The answer in the supply numbers is yes. Pete Hegseth's plan seems like that the hearing was not to defend the war on its merits. It was to attack the people who were asking the questions. Reckless, feckless, and defeatist are not the words or language of a cabinet officer asking for a vote. It is the language of an administration that has decided the law does not apply to it. That public attack is a better use of its time than the legal compliance. That is a real choice. It tells us exactly where this is going. And the choice has consequences. Tomorrow, Friday, the 1st of May, the 60-day clock on this war runs out. The law gives the president 1 extra month to wind things down. After that, the president must bring American troops home unless the Congress has voted to keep the war going on. Senators like Susan Collins, Thom Tillis, John Curtis, and Lisa Murkowski have already said that they will vote no. Murkowski is even writing a fresh war authorization that will force a Senate vote. The administration could lose that vote. According to the new Axios reporting, CENTCOM has a strike package on the president's desk, and at the short and powerful wave of attacks designed to break Iran's negotiation position. A second plan to take part of Hormuz with ground troops. Both happen, if they happen, after the 60-day clock has run out and after Congress may have voted no. The question is no longer whether the law will be enforced. The question is whether the president is willing to keep widening this war while his own legislature is calling it illegal. The Pentagon is asking for $200 billion in fresh war funding. They want $1.5 trillion for next year. They are doing this while telling Americans that gas at $4.23 a gallon is the cost of standing up to the Iran. The contracts being signed this week for the next round of weapons will run for 10 years. This is not a war that ends in May, in my opinion. This is a war that has been built into the American economy. That is the thing Congress will actually have to decide if it can stop another forever war. Let's talk to our guest. We have with us Victor J. Willi. He is a strategic advisor and an expert on Middle East geopolitics and political economy with over 25 years of experience. Thank you so much, Victor, for joining us. First of all, what's your analysis or what are your thoughts on the current scenario where President Trump has rejected another proposal from Iran? And there are reports in Axios, for example, that he is preparing for a second wave of strikes. Do you think this war ending anytime soon?
I mean, it's a bit questionable to what extent we can talk about a war. It is more like a stalemate.
Yeah.
There is no active war at the moment. I mean, there in Iran at least, not the way we saw it before. But it's also not a situation of peace, of course, and it's also not a situation where there is a possibility for a diplomatic solution to emerge. And I think the problem has to do with several things. There are constraints of either side on the spectrum. So from the American side, yes, President Trump is bolstering to some extent, but he faces some various serious restraints and obstacles. One is this upcoming visit to China that has been postponed already and that is now supposed to take place in mid-May. It's a very important visit for President Trump. The second one is the midterm elections that are also upcoming at some point. The third is, general pressure that is mounting on him from the part of European allies, from the part of other allies. And of course, then there is the economic aspect in terms of food prices, gas prices, and so on. So there is I don't believe that President Trump really wants to have another round of war at this stage. I think he wants to get out, and what we see from him at the moment is basically just brinkmanship, bolstering, like pretending, raising the stakes, kind of a playing poker.
Yeah.
And then on the side of the Iranians, I think the problem is the fact that we don't really know, who's in charge. Actually, I think there is probably an infighting taking place within the Iranian system. I think the Revolutionary Guards and certain people within the Revolutionary Guards are becoming stronger, and they're trying to take the initiative. And we saw at several instances that the foreign minister said one thing and then something else happened. So I think that the leadership structure in Iran is disrupted, but it is not disrupted to such an extent that it's actually falling. So from both ends, it is unclear, how things are going, and the situation is just stuck. I mean, you have this double blockade around the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah. And I'll come to it later that there are reports that probably President Trump is looking forward to an extended blockade and he's asking other countries to join in. But before that, the way you have presented the whole scenario, we feel we are in a no war, no peace era right now. And some people say this is a frozen conflict. Could you take us back to how the Cold War was being fought and how the other frozen conflicts have been handled in the past? Because if I look at the number, $25 billion in 2 months have been spent by the American administration on this war. They are low on stockpiles. They are asking for more money from Congress. it seems as if it's not an active war, at least it's a conflict that is going to prolong. This is how it seems. What's your take on it?
Well, I think the president has a constitutional duty, and he actually needs to ask Congress if the war goes on beyond 2 months. And this is why where things are stuck at the moment from the American side. I mean, with respect to the Cold War, I'm not sure if we can compare it, strategically or ideologically to the Cold War. Actually, the Cold War was an ideological war between two sort of worldviews, between communism and capitalism. And on the geostrategic level, it was a global conflict. But this conflict is around the specific issue is the Strait of Hormuz, and then of course it's the nuclear program. I'm not sure that we can compare the Cold War to the Iran conflict. So I wouldn't
Not
necessarily
compare,
make
but the
that.
tensions
Yeah,
around this conflict, as some analysts put it, that it's a frozen conflict and it's going to
yeah.
stay. You can't neatly box it into one kind of a leaflet. It's like multipolar. It has ideological leaflets in it, it has political leanings in it, it has now OPEC like
Mm,
cartels involved in it. Now it is Strait of
mhm,
Hormuz involved in it. So it started from Gaza, I would say, October the 7th. And look at it where
mhm.
we are now. It has, I think it's spilling over.
I agree with you that it started from with Gaza. I mean, this was the original impetus that gave rise to the whole shift in the tectonic plates of the Middle East. And I also agree that we can probably call this a frozen conflict, or at the moment it's stuck at least. And it's unclear what can unfreeze it. I mean, what has happened, just to take a step back, is that the United States, we have to see, the United States has gone into this war without really thinking about the consequences, as far as I can tell.
True.
The reason is that there was not really a policy making process to speak of anymore happening in the United States, because there were so many people, so many analysts, experts got fired from the State Department and so on. And so there was not really a deliberation going on about the day after, about how to get out. And it was more like a small number of people went into this. Maybe there was some hubris involved, maybe some sort of overconfidence because of what happened in Venezuela. Let's go do the same thing in Iran. And now we're in this scenario, and we're stuck. And then the other thing was the surprise attack, or not the attack, but the retaliation or the defense of Iran, how they actually attacked the Gulf states, how this sort of widened the whole conflict to become a regional conflict, and then finally the Strait of Hormuz, which now led to the American blockade as well. So I think from that end, yes, there are more and more elements involved. It's more and more complex to disentangle this conflict, and it's not clear for me what the next step should be. But so I agree with the designation as a frozen conflict.
Yeah. There is a report in front of me that says that the centrist leader of Israeli opposition, Yair Lapid, and a
Hmm.
right-wing former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett have announced that they would combine forces in elections this year against Bibi Netanyahu. And they have a history. They did de-seat 5 years ago, their partnership, in fact. But then Bibi Netanyahu is back as prime minister, and this is election year in Israel. And we all know Pakistan has mentioned this in the Security Council yesterday, that unless and until the problem around the Palestinian state is resolved, this whole crisis in Middle East is not going anywhere. So do you
Hmm.
think the change of leadership in Israel would stop this kind of a conflict, which is escalating with every year?
I don't think that they, these parties don't largely disagree that much when it comes to foreign policy. I mean, every Israeli leader of any or most parties agrees that Iran is a fundamental threat to Israel. And in my view, rightly so, because Iran keeps repeating that they want to wipe out Israel. And so, like, hindering Iran from getting a nuclear weapon at all costs is in the, according to these leaders, is in the national interest of Israel. And so they all agree on this. I mean, what they maybe disagree on is more concerned with domestic politics and so on. But when it comes to foreign policy, I don't think that a change in leadership will fundamentally alter the foreign policy priorities of Israel. Of course, how they are being pursued is a different question. Neither Lapid nor Bennett are facing corruption scandals in Israel. None of them has an interest to, prolonging the war or, finding new reasons to go to war, as is sometimes reproached to Netanyahu. So that element is lacking. But in terms of foreign policy, I don't think the priorities of Israel would greatly change.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Victor J. Willi. It was a pleasure having you on our show tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.